Today I'll be reviewing the Walltown Craftworks Watts fountain pen in Violet Abalone. The box is cardboard and has the name Walltown Craftworks on it, and then it slides out to have both the business card and the pen inside. Brett and Susan Arnold run Walltown Craftworks. It's a straightforward kind of velvet covered box with the pen inside. It's made of this beautiful resin called Violet Abalone. It has purple, white, blue, black, green, and these sparkles. The cap screws off and doesn't have a clip and unscrews in about 1.5 turns. The section screws off right in front of the threads that thread on the cap. These threads on the section are very clean and smooth. Likewise for the threads inside of the cap. Looking inside the cap, there's a step inside of there where the section will meet that step to seal off the nib inside the cap to keep it wet. You can see the slight step at the bottom there of the inside of the cap. I ordered it with a 1.5 nib, and as a Jowo number 6 unit, it screws right out. I'll talk a little bit more later about why I like this. It's a nice lightweight pen that fits very comfortably in your hand. It's a nice length, and even though the pen is girthy, the section is pretty standard for most pens, and these threads are very smooth. And the pen does not post. And here's how it looks in the writing position in my hand. Compared to a Lamy 2000, it's about the same length, but it's much more girthier. Pretty much well the same without the cap. It's longer and much more girthier than an Edison Beaumont. And then it uncapped, the same thing, even though the nibs are exactly the same size. It's about as girthy as a Mont Blanc 149 and slightly shorter. Uncapped, it's slightly longer than the 149, and the section is much more girthier in the 149, along with the nib being much larger. Finally, we get a pen that's girthier. This is the Kasama Una. It's slightly longer than the Kasama Una, even though they have the same size nib. The section in the Kasama Una is slightly more narrow, and then the Walltown Watts is slightly longer. The pen closed is 141 millimeters. Open, it's 131 millimeters. The cap is 16.7 millimeters, and it weighs a nice light 24 grams. Walltown Craftworks pens are handcrafted in Durham, North Carolina. You may have noticed during the comparisons that the nib kept changing in the pen. It came with a 1.5 Jowo number 6 nib. The Kasama Una also comes with a Jowo number 6 nib. This one is a flex nib from Regalia Writing Labs. I eyedropper it and like all that ink in the barrel to go to the flex nib. That's why the original nib is not in my Kasama Una. My original Edison nib is in another pen. What I have in here now is an FNF flex nib. These pens are sometimes slightly disparagingly called a number 6 nib holder. But to me, it opens up a whole nother world of pen fun. Nibs from a variety of companies like Franklin, Christoph, and Edison fit a number 6 Jowo nib. You can put Goulet and Noodler's nibs into the nib unit itself, and if you flatten it out a little bit, even a zebra nib will fit into a number 6 nib unit. Right now, I have a Secretary of Deflex nib being made by Pen Realm to fit all these pens. This really is a fun way to experiment with different pens and different nibs quite easily. I like supporting the small businesses and craftspeople that make these pens and different nibs. Mixing and matching these beautiful acrylics with interesting nibs makes for a really fun pen experience. And I can do it without, say, grinding or really contorting or messing or fiddling too much with a nib. So let's check this pen out with a couple of nibs and a couple of inks. The first one being an ink called Dance Party, which is a collaboration between Like Taupe and Tono and Limbs. It's a pink ink with some green shimmer. So I'll be testing the pens out with a shimmer ink, a pigment ink, and just a regular ink. The 1.5 nib that the pen came with writes smoothly, and you can use it for a little bit of like calligraphy, like italic writing. Here it is with a full page of writing. It's kind of a nice girly pink, and the shimmer doesn't show up really that much. You have to write pretty large to use a 1.5 nib, as you can see here. Next, we'll be using a Flex 1.1 nib with the ink called Kakeru. It's from Tono and Lim's Fixation line, which means that it's a pigment ink and also waterproof. This line of inks is really interesting because it comes in beautiful bright colors, and also it's not really thick like a lot of the older pigment inks. But it is still a pigment ink, so you need to respect that because it can stain things. One of the things I like about the Watts fountain pen is, for as large as it is, it's light, and also it's kind of bigger, which keeps me from really squeezing the pen too hard, which I tend to do when I'm flex writing. So here I'm flexing and my hand is a lot more comfortable with the light, nice, wider pen. Here it is as a full page of writing. You can ignore that, that's just some bleed through from the back side. But it has some beautiful shading and it looks really good in the flex. And it's a nice, bright, beautiful blue color, and it's waterproof. Let me show you. Here's the page I ran underwater. There's a little bit of color lift here, but it's all totally readable. It's just that the paper is all wrinkly now from being wet. And as you can see, even with the 1.1, you need to write a little bit bigger. Next, we're going to use a kind of regular ink. It's not pigment or shimmer, but it's a chromo shading ink from a collaboration between iPaper and Yachting Style. The ink is called Bellflower, and you can see the flower kind of shows up through the cutout in the box. The bottom is wider than the top, therefore you need to open the bottom of the box in order to pull the ink out. This is a kind of gray ink with blue and purple shading. Yachting Style makes these gorgeous glass pens that function like a fountain pen, where you use a converter to draw up the ink and then your glass pen stays inked up. Here I'm using FNF's Flex Nib. This really is a fun ink to use with either a very wet pen or a flex pen. Here's some ink I dropped on there so you could see a little bit of all the chromo shading. It's also what shows up on the box with the blue and the gray and the purple and a little bit of pink too. The flower on the box matches up really well with this ink spot here. And the writing with the nib looks really nice. You have a fine point when you're writing, and then when you're flexing it's much thicker and you can see more of the shading properties. So hopefully I've shown you that having a Jowo No. 6 nib holder is a good thing, especially when it comes in the beautiful acrylics like with Walltown Craftworks pens. I'll leave their information in the description box below, but I'll also be trying other craftspeople's pens. There's a whole slew of them on Instagram and Etsy. I hope to build up a whole wardrobe of these beautiful pens and be interchanging the nibs like, I don't know, like your shoes or your purse. If you found this video either entertaining or informative, I'd appreciate a thumbs up and a subscribe. In about 3 weeks, I'll be approaching 1 year of making videos for YouTube. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to show here, and I'd appreciate any comments giving me your feedback on what you'd like to see on this channel.